After e4, c5, knight f3 and g6, as mentioned in the previous videos, we immediately played d4. And after pawn takes, queen takes back, there's an attack on the rook. So after knight f6 blocking that, of course because bishop g7 is not possible, you will take it, knight f6, white immediately attacks the knight. This is a very aggressive way to play. Best move by black would be knight c6, gaining a tempo on the queen. And after queen a4, black has to move the knight away from the attack of the pawn, plays knight to d5. And now, as seen in the previous videos, queen b3 with an attack on the knight. So let's go through once again one of the main variations, knight c7. Now the move is knight g5, immediately looking for checkmate. Because, you know, we are patzer players. Whenever we see a mate, we'll play for the mate. And the move we're going to go through in this video is the strongest move that black can play. Although you can check out the previous video to see all the things that can go wrong, and things can go massively wrong. Black plays knight to e6 though, main move. So what's the move now? Knight takes knight. Best way to take would be with the d pawn, obviously, because taking with the f pawn would be a disaster. You'll be closing off your light square bishop forever, making the king more unstable. So white now simply goes on with knight c3, developing move, and we're completely ignoring the fact that black can take the pawn and the attack of the knight, knight to d4. Those are two ideas. So let's go through them. If black plays knight to d4, that's a bad move, attacking the queen, but you can play queen a4 check. Now the bishop cannot block because then you will win the knight for free, and the black player will have to admit wasting tempos. Knight to c6, but then you can keep developing. You can develop the bishop, you can play rook to d1 with an attack on the queen. It's an excellent position. What happens if instead black doesn't give up on the development and just plays queen to d7, blocking the check and protecting the knight, with still the idea of playing bishop to g7 and castle long, like a decent chess player. Also because black is never going to castle long side, since this file is completely open, it will be a disaster. White goes on with the winning move, knight to b5. The idea, obviously, is to play knight to c7 check. The queen is pinned by our queen, and we're going to win the rook. This cannot be stopped. Knight take knight is not possible because bishop b5 wins the game, pinning the queen to the king. And there's no other move that makes sense. Also because we have double attack on the knight. So there's no other move that black can play that doesn't lose a piece for free. We can just play queen takes d4. Our knight is defended by the bishop. Best move according to the engine is a6, but it's compromised already. Knight c7 check. Only move king d8. And now first we swap queens. And when the bishop takes back, either way, bishop or king takes back, doesn't matter, because you're winning a rook. And the difference is that yes, black can play knight c2, doing the same thing to us. But the difference is that the black knight is going to be trapped. Our knight is not going to be trapped. After knight c2, king d1, knight takes rook. And now we save our knight, knight to b6 with an attack on the bishop. So for example, bishop g7 or whatever black wants to play, even save the bishop. Either way, there's not much difference because nothing stops you from playing bishop d2 and then slowly walk until you take the knight. So let's say bishop g7, take the bishop, king takes back, and now bishop to d2 is the key move. There is no way to save the black knight. You're going up a piece. You're winning a piece no matter what. Rook c8 doesn't save the knight in order to play knight c2 because you can play bishop c3, and that was why bishop d2 was the crucial move. Bishop c3, you're blocking this off. You're walking to take the knight. And in this position, instead of rook c8, if black plays bishop to e5, that looks good. But you're still going to play bishop to c3. And again, you're going to take the knight no matter what. If bishop takes, pawn takes, again, the knight is still trapped. Rook to c8 attacking, the pawn is met with king to d2. And you're going to be winning the knight. In this case, you're going to be winning it with the rook as soon as you develop this bishop. And by the way, in this position, earlier we went through bishop g7. You might be wondering what happens after bishop c6 with the idea of going to e4 and protecting the square where the knight will go away from. This is met with the crucial f3, stopping that from happening. And yes, now we're just going to go on with the usual idea of simply going and taking the opponent knight, which is trapped. So from the start, e4, c5, knight f3, g6, d4. Take with the queen with an attack on the rook, knight f6. We attack the knight, knight c6, attacking our queen, queen a4, knight d5, queen b3 attacks the knight, and after knight c7, knight to g5, key move. For more information about all the things that can happen in this game, go and watch the previous video of this saga. Now here the best move is knight to e6, we're gonna take. Pawn takes back, and now knight to c3. What happens if black simply takes this pawn? Knight to e5. It looks really good. You're winning a pawn, the development is happening, you're gonna castle, and that was also a central pawn. But actually, that's when the trouble begins. White continues with bishop f4 attacking the knight, and this knight can't really be defended because let's say bishop g7 to defend the knight looks like the most normal move you can imagine, but now simply bishop takes, queen b5 check wins the piece. So that move's not possible. In this position, instead of bishop g7, the knight should have to go back basically. Or maybe black could develop the queen, but that would be really stupid. I mean, think about it. Where? Queen d6? That loses. Bishop to b5 check. And now the king can't move because then rook d1 will pin the queen to the king. The knight can't block because the knight is pinned. So obviously after bishop d7, rook to d1 will do the job. You're going to be taking the knight. You're going to have double attack on d7. It depends on what black will do. Let's say queen to c7, but I think it's just pointless to look at this. You can play a check with the bishop. The knight is pinned because then you're going to win the queen. So that's game over. And here, what are you going to do? Queen c7? Well, too late. Queen b5. You have double attack over the knight and the check as well. So you're going to win a piece. So in this position, the black player will have to move the knight back to c6. Unless he wants to triple up his pawns. So knight to c6. And now the game is compromised once again. Knight to b5. And the idea is to go to c7, obviously. This cannot be stopped with e5. It looks like e5 is protected by the knights attacking the bishop. It's cutting off the diagonal and the attack over c7 because white now goes on with the attack. Rook to d1 attacking the queen. The queen will have to move. But where? Nowhere. She's desperate. More desperate than my dates when I don't reply their texts. Queen to b6, for example. Okay, bishop e3 attacks the queen. The queen will have to move. c7 is not accessible. a6 is not accessible because knight c7 wins the queen. d8 is not accessible because of the rook. Well, knight d4 is also not possible because of queen to c4. Nothing stops us from playing knight c7 now. That's our plan. And the knight is pinned by the bishop. So here what happens if instead queen check? Okay, surprisingly the best move now here is this. Queen to c3, blocking the check. But even then it's just too late because even black's best move, queen takes queen, take back with the pawn. Doesn't matter, you're doubling up your pawns, but you're threatening checkmate, knight checkmate. How is that going to be stopped? It cannot be stopped except with bishop to d7 because now the rook is no longer attacking the 8, but still knight c7 check, king moves, knight takes rook, and the knight is not even going to get trapped because king to c8, then bishop takes, and you are now preventing the arrival of the king to b8. You're going to save the piece. If black takes your bishop, then you're going to recapture the extra piece. Knight b6 puts double attack on the bishop with the rook, cooperation with the rook, and checks the king. So you're going to be up so much in material. And in this position, after rook to d1, we mentioned that the queen cannot go anywhere. What happens after bishop d7? White continues with bishop to g5, saving the bishop from the attack of the pawn and threatening knight to d6 check. Only move will be to take the knight and then take the queen, and white will go up quite a lot of material. So after bishop g5, what to do? Okay, bishop g7, for example, gives a space for the king, but still knight to d7 check, king moves, and now queen f7 is checkmate. Just in case you didn't see that. So in this position, what to do? Queen a5 check, best attempt by black is met by bishop to d2, attacking the queen. We don't want to swap in such position, although we'll still be okay. But after bishop d2, now the queen has to move again. So after queen to d8, what are you going to do now? You're going to play bishop g5 looking for a repetition? You're not going to do that. Unless your opponent is 1,000 points higher rated than you, in which case, nah, I'm kidding. Of course not. You're completely winning. You don't need to make a repetition. What to do now? Bishop c4. Get one more piece into the game and threaten f7. This will be a checkmate. Will black see it? Well, I guess so. e6 will stop that from happening. But now white castles, development is complete. But it looks like black player might be able to play a normal game, especially after bishop fianchetto and castle. Is that going to happen though? Well, let's see. Bishop g7 trying to develop. Now bishop to g5 attacks the queen, and as mentioned, we're going to be attacking the dark squares because they're very weak. Now let's not waste time looking at what happens if queen takes bishop, because simply knight to c7 check, we're up material. If king goes to e7, connecting the rooks, ready to recapture the knight, well, simply queen a3 check, and the king will have to go backwards, and so that's not going to happen. If instead after the check king moves to, I don't know, d8, and then wants to start marching to the knight, well, queen to b7 ends the game. You got an attack on the rook can't really save itself, and the queen's very close to the attack over the bishop in d7. The black player's got nothing. The rook can't really save itself by going to d8 or c8 because of the stunning knight e6 check move. You're attacking the queen. The pawn in f cannot take you because you've got checkmate. Queen d7 is checkmate. The bishop can't take you because it's pinned. So you work it out from here. In this position, we saw that queen g5 is not possible. Obviously, f6 attacking the bishop is bad because bishop f6 is completely winning. The bishop in d7 is pinned, and now you have double attack on it. So it doesn't matter whatever black will do, you're going to win a lot of material. If bishop takes bishop, then you can take the queen. If they take our bishop, then you probably have a checkmate here or something. I'm not even going to be bothered going with this any longer. And in this position after bishop g5, what happens after the queen moving away? Well, none of these squares make sense to go to. You also have knight d6, potential threat. What happens after queen to b8, stopping the knight from going to these two extremely annoying checks? Well, not really d6. d6 is still possible for us to play as we are protected by the rook, and that is our best chance. Knight to d6 check. Well, there's no way for the king to go on the dark diagonal because of the bishop. So after king to f8, knight to f7 is the final blow. We're going to be taking the rook, winning the exchange. We also have an attack on the bishop. So if king takes knight, then we have the infiltration of the rook. If the king goes back, we still have bishop e6. The queen is coming afterwards. It's game over. So king takes knight also, obviously loses check. And after bishop e6, the black player will be forced to surrender